I wish I had my glass. There's a balloon in her face.
In your lifetime, just about every one of you will be touched by cancer. It might be a friend, a family member, or even one of us. Last spring, Moi Lee, only 17 years old, was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma non-Hodgkin's cancer. As of September 2nd, 2014, Moi finished her intense rounds of chemotherapy and is now in remission. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Haley Goldberg and I'm a senior here at BHS. And our speaker here today is a very close friend of mine, and she represents all the reasons why we do Relay for Life. It was only 6 months ago that we were told Moi had a 2% chance of even having cancer. She had a pain in her legs and her doctors were just being cautious by exploring all causes. Moi is a vibrant, active dancer with an abundance of energy. Her mom and I actually laughed at the idea of our little Moisers being sick. There was just no way. At that time, it never crossed our minds that 2% statistic could mean anything at all. But it did. That 2% became 100%, and our sense of reality changed. About a week later, 5 of us received a group text from Moi saying, "I have something important to tell you guys." I called Moi immediately, and she answered the phone, hardly able to breathe. The only words I grasped between her sobs and her deep breaths were stage 4 and cancer. I was completely speechless. It felt like someone had just punched a hole in my stomach. This was not the news I was expecting. To be completely honest, I was prepared to be comforting Moi about some type of boy drama or something. But no, it was the fact that one of my closest friends at 17 years old was going to be starting chemotherapy, spending weeks in the hospital the summer before her senior year. I think back to that first phone call when Moi said, "Haley, I'm so scared." It was in that moment that I realized cancer hits us when we least expect it. It felt so unfair. Moi didn't deserve this. Being the determined, resilient person we all know her to be, Moi was the one telling us it was all going to be okay. Always with a smile on her face. Moi would keep saying, "Don't worry guys, I'm going to kick cancer's ass." Throughout the summer, Moi never looked sick. She was tired and sometimes could hardly speak, which at times were really hard seeing her in those stages, but she looked great. Reality didn't set in until Moi lost all of her hair. She courageously asked a few friends to shave her head. Right after, I received Moi's first selfie with her new shaved head. It brought tears to my eyes, not because I felt bad, but because I was so happy to see such a huge smile on Moi's face. She had 2 thumbs up and her caption said, "The new me," with that smiley face emoji. Moi has taught us all what it means to be strong and to believe in yourself. Only 8 weeks ago, Moi spent her last day in the hospital, surrounded by at least 30 people of friends and family. She had finally finished her extreme chemotherapy in only 3 months. At one point during the last day, Moi and I lay on that pull-out couch in her hospital room where, by the way, one of her parents would sleep each night. I kept nudging her saying, "Moi, you did it. You're freaking done with chemo." I looked over at Moi to see tears rolling down her face. You would think these were tears of joy and happiness, but no, Moi was actually crying because she felt guilty that she had it so easy. While she only lived 5 minutes away from the hospital, others, like Rachel, another 17-year-old who had leukemia, lived 4 hours away and could not go home. Moi felt guilty that she always had company while Rachel never had one person come to visit. She felt guilty because she finished chemo when every other hospital bed around her had children still going through treatment, and some even getting worse. This speaks volumes about Moi. She is one of the most compassionate people you will ever meet. She successfully pushed through cancer with a positive attitude and a smile on her face. She's an inspiration to us all. Moi Lee is the face of a 17-year-old who has kicked cancer's ass. This is a big step for Moi, as this is the first time she has spoken publicly outside of her community. We are so honored and excited to have her share her personal story with us today. I'm so grateful to be your friend, little koi fish. So without further ado, please welcome the one and only Moi Lee.
Hi everyone! My name is Moi Lee, and as Haley said, I'm a senior at Sacred Heart Prep, and I was diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer on May 28, 2014. Before I begin my speech, I would like to acknowledge and thank all of the incredible people who have been there for me and kept me company this entire summer. Even if it was just a text or a Facebook chat, every message meant so much to me. I also want to thank Haley Goldberg for inviting me, and BHS for reaching out to me. This is an incredible event, and I know so much hard work was put into it and organizing everything, and I'm truly honored to be speaking here to you all. Okay, now here we go. As I said before, I was diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer on May 28th, and can validate that facing death is the most challenging thing one can go through. My doctor took about an hour to explain to me that I had cancer, and I didn't cry once. I stared at the wall, emotionless. I felt nothing, and I didn't know if that was stemming from my extreme denial or overall shock. But when the doctor mentioned one of the side effects of chemotherapy is hair loss, I looked down from my gaze, held my face in my hands, and started to bawl. Not because I'm obsessed with my looks or in love with my hair, but because being a bald 17-year-old girl in high school can highly mess with your self-esteem. My brother ran over to my side and said, "Moi, keep your head up." My mom rubbed my back, and my dad began the flow of the most common saying, "Stay strong, Moi, you'll get through this." But I could not lift my face out of my hands, and the tears kept dripping. The doctor gave us some time as a family, but we were soon moved to a waiting area where I would be surrounded by complete strangers. These strangers had zero idea about my diagnosis, but I knew what it was, and that was enough to make me feel so alone. And it felt so weird that strangers or not, everyone I encountered for the next few months or years wouldn't know my complete story. So beginning from then, I felt what I call the "you don't understand" gap start to form, because really no one could understand. We got out of the hospital, and my crying had paused for the moment on the ride home. And lucky us, we got pulled over by a cop for making a wrong turn. My dad looked him in the eye and said, "Sorry, officer, we're just trying to get my daughter home. She was just diagnosed with cancer." Hearing this word again, I burst into tears. Would this happen every time the word came up? At that moment, I didn't know the answer to this question. But soon, the word cancer became a part of all conversations, and I quickly accepted it. I had to accept it, because it was the only option for me. There was no yes or no, there was only a yes. This was my life's path. So on June 20th, my very first day of chemo, it all suddenly became real. I was admitted to the hospital for 2 to 3 days. My very first infusion of chemo was an IV dose of a drug called rituximab, and I felt absolutely no side effects. I thought, wow, this is so easy. So I went home after those 3 days with my head held high. Battling cancer, piece of cake. I was admitted back to the hospital on June 25th. This would be the real deal. 8 to 9 days in the hospital, receiving chemo each one. Once again, I had no side effects, no nausea, no vomiting, no mouth sores, no body aches, no headaches, no heightened senses, nothing. One evening, I went walking over the halls with my friend Andrew because I needed to get out of my room and I needed to get a little blood flowing at some point or another. And when we had made it all the way from Lucille Packard to Stanford Hospital, we paused for a moment. I distinctly remember looking at him and saying, "I kind of like this." Then, confused, he replied and said, "What?" And I said, "Chemo is kind of easy." Well, jinx is all I can say, because the next day, all of the side effects hit me. And the side effects lasted for months. It was during this time period that rating my pain on a scale of 1 to 10 seemed impossible, because as gritty as this is, it honestly just felt like I was dying. I remember being at a loss for words, trying to describe how I felt to some of my friends, and the only thing I could come up with was that I thought I was living in a black hole. My body not only felt like it was being physically destroyed, but chemo was taking a mental toll. It made me feel vulnerable, self-conscious, frustrated, angry, spiteful, sad, and overall like a downright weak human being. And being a weak human being was not who I was. The real Moi Lee was not a weak human being, and that's what made everything so hard for me, because I knew what life was like without cancer. And I knew what it was like to be a normal teen, and I could not be one. My entire life was on hold so I could survive, and I had no control. In a way, I knew I was alive, but it felt as if I wasn't even living. I was kind of just existing. And to exist but not to be alive is the worst state one can be in. During chemo, I think I almost forgot what positivity and optimism was, because I really hated everything. I hated having to take pills the size of my face 5 times a day. I hated that my ill-functioning body made me lose my hair. I hated having to fertilize and harvest my eggs in case chemo harmed them, because really no 17-year-old girl should have to think that far into the future. I hated that my own mother had to learn how to give a shot so that every day, when we weren't at the hospital, we could stay on the regimen. And all I can say about that is ouch. I hated that no one I knew was in my shoes and could guide me and let me know the pain I was going through was normal, because all I wanted was to feel some type of normal. I hated that I felt a ginormous gap and a disconnect from my friends and family, because my life had become so different than everyone else's. I hated that all my senses were extremely heightened. I hated that I had to be so incredibly conscious about germs, and I hated that I missed out on what could have been an incredible summer. I hated chemo because it just plain sucked and there was no way around it. But what I didn't hate were some of the unforgettable memories that came along with it all. And although I have a fuzzy memory of the whole summer, I know for a fact there was some good in it. I can remember 3 stories perfectly in my head, and although you may not know who I speak of, it's really the moments that matter the most. The first moment is a moment of triumph. My hair was never a prized possession for me, as I said before. But I believe hair can make or break how one feels about themselves, or at least how I felt about myself. My hair contributed to what made me feel beautiful, and cutting it to a buzz was hard. Really, really hard. But the only way I was going to cut it was with some of my best friends by my side. So 2 days after it started falling out, disgustingly, to the point where I'd be sitting, not moving, to turn around and find 40 pieces of hair just lying on the couch. When it got to that point, I decided to not wait until it thinned. It was going to come out ASAP. Because it was too sad to watch it fall out piece by piece. I wanted it over with. So on July 10th, I looked at myself, took one last selfie with my hair, tied it up, and had my mom cut my ponytails to send to Locks of Love. As for my friends' duties, one was shaving, one in charge of the scissors, and the other the photographer. To begin, my friend John began shaving it and Mitch with his scissors, while John Robert made sure we got all the necessary pics to have options for Insta the next morning. And the 3 of them made it a funny, non-emotional process. We made myself look like an Asian boy, a little gremlin, and I can't deny we were full of laughs. While Mitch was loving the power he got from the scissors, just snipping away at whatever he wanted, my friend John Bird, well, he was working up a sweat shaving my head, because if I got one little cut, we would have to stop and start worrying about infections. But he got it done, no cuts, just a brand new bald me. And being able to cut my hair without crying and just having genuine laughs about it, that made me feel strong, and in that moment I felt triumphant. On August 1st, during one of my breaks, I was feeling pretty good and I hurriedly made the decision to go out. I felt so energetic, I decided to drive my friends, Mr. Phil and Derek, to and home from a party. In the middle of this party, I got an awful headache, and the senses heightened side effect for sure came into play. The loud noises, the cold, the lights, it was not for me. So I bundled up in a sweatshirt and lay in the back seat of the car to wait until my friends were done with the party. Once the boys were finally in the car and ready to go home, together they became a little rambunctious. Derek decided he wanted to play dubstep and openly ate his awful smelling Snickers bars. My friend Mister decided to call a certain someone and was enjoying yelling on the phone, even though I repeatedly told him it would be beneficial for myself and for him if he just gave me his phone. All I wanted was a nice, quiet and chill ride, but they would not comply. I begged my friend Phil to come and get them to listen to me, but everything we said to the boys to make them shut up just made them louder. So even though I wanted to punch them in the face, by the time I got home, I was happy. I had a fun night with my best friends, and more than anything, I felt normal for once. These boys weren't treating me like I was some sick child, but just like the best friends that I knew we were. On August 19th, during another one of my breaks, the story of a little Taco Bell midnight run with my friends Michael, Hannah, and Natalie is one that will never be forgotten. We were hungry, and although we very well knew there was a possibility I was going to puke because of the smells, once again my favorite heightened senses side effects comes into play. We went anyways. Michael took us to the drive-thru, and immediately I screamed. We knew this meant red flag, let's get out of here. But no, we stayed in line because we wanted those Crunchwrap Supremes, those tacos, and because as teenagers we should be able to just go to Taco Bell without worrying about whether or not one of us is going to get sick because we have cancer. Our food came and the smell was so strong on the ride home. My friend Natalie held tightly, clinging for dear life to the Taco Bell bag out of the car window as I buried myself in my sweatshirt, trying to avoid contact with the slightest whiff of a little crunch wrap. Natalie thought she was going to get frostbite, but my friend Michael zipped us home as fast as he could, and my friend Hannah, well, she was just laughing the whole time in the back seat. And even though the nausea was real that night, I can't deny I was laughing pretty hard with her. Besides these three moments over the entire summer and fall, people who I'd never met or even heard of began reaching out to me, and everyone's outstanding and unparalleled support never stopped. There is not a day that goes by when someone doesn't ask how I'm doing. From the endless dinners, snacks, visits, messages, hugs, laughs, and smiles, I could not be more thankful, because really, my supporters are what got me through this. So, as chemo did bring me some of the most unbearable pain, it wasn't all bad. In fact, now that I am done with chemo, I've been able to reflect and have I learned and matured and found so much about myself during the process. During my last round of chemo, I cried the last 2 days when I had to leave the hospital. I was sad to leave my incredible nurses who I had created such special bonds with. I was sad to leave behind the $12,000 hospital bed that had seriously become more of my own bed than my one at home. And I was sad to leave the safety of One North at Lucille Packard, where I had been getting treated the entire summer. But mostly I cried because I felt so guilty. Haley touched on this a little bit, but I felt guilty because I only had to stay in the hospital for 8 to 9 days every 2 weeks for 3 months, while others stayed way more. I cried because I knew I had it easy while others suffered much more than I did. I cried because I knew one boy who had to come back even after a 200-day stay for more treatment. I cried because the most adorable 8-year-old girl, Irene, couldn't even leave her room without a gas mask. I cried because I knew 2 days before my final release, when I would be happily prancing out of the hospital, there was a boy the same age as I, living down the hall, who died of cancer. And I still cry because I know a girl named Rebecca who has the strongest heart but the weakest body. She has leukemia and has been fighting for what seems like forever now, but I have faith that soon she will triumph and beat cancer like I know she can. I now know and can understand how lucky I was. When I left the hospital, I felt as if I didn't suffer enough to be done. And when I look back at it in the grand scheme of things, cancer was not the worst possible thing that could have ever happened to me. It was possibly the hardest thing I'll face in my life, but it was also a blessing, because I learned so much I would not have learned otherwise. The quote that one underestimates how good something it is until it's gone is true. Humans should enjoy what they have, come to terms with who they are, and live life with an attitude that things will eventually turn out if they believe at some point they will. In my experiences facing cancer, it was difficult for me to recognize the importance of perseverance and understand why I couldn't just give up. Fighting cancer was tough. I finally faced true hardship in my life, and to put it plainly, I experienced what facing death was like and can validate, as I said before, that it is a true challenge. But getting through it all gave me an entirely new outlook. Mostly, it taught me to be brave and resilient. But those are just adjectives. Cancer taught me that living life with a negative attitude makes it a whole lot harder. Cancer taught me to be grateful for my life, every breath, every step, and every part of my now healthy, functioning body. Cancer taught me to really live my life, because our time on Earth, our experiences are truly magical. Cancer taught me to love deeply. Cancer taught me to be honest and real. Cancer taught me looks don't matter, and cancer taught me to grow and mature quickly. Cancer proved to me that every cliche saying, like when you put your mind to something you can accomplish it, weren't just cliches, they were true. So even though I had a love-hate relationship with cancer, I couldn't be more thankful for how much it opened my eyes. I believe my final message to you all is clear. Live with your head up and your heart strong, and nothing can stop you, not even cancer. Thank you.